May 15th. You'd think it's the beginning of spring, right? Not quite. 40 degrees outside. Good old northern spring. But I'd rather have this than sweltering 110 degrees. I'll get there soon enough. Back on the road. Gonna see some interesting stuff. Stick around. Mr. Popo. Speed trap. Woohoo! Alright. Look at this sign. It says 65 miles an hour. Radar enforced. They got another sign up here. I think when it gets down to 55, it's going to say strictly enforced. So I'll have a little more to say about that when that comes around. Slower traffic, keep right. Alright. Again, trucks. Now, slower traffic, keep right does not mean that if you want to pass, you can just blaze on the left lane and do whatever you want just to pass. Slower traffic, keep right there, means if you're going below the speed limit to keep right. If you're going at the speed limit, you can ride in the left lane. And if I can find that one that says strictly enforced, it's a vague, very vague law, or very vague interpretation of the speed laws, in that as Hashnasi says, there are preventive type laws, and even though you're not doing anything wrong per se, you haven't hurt anybody, you haven't broken any in-say laws, it's still take it up with a judge kind of thing. You may be very well within your rights, but the reality is you have to choose your battles. Are you going to argue with the cop and say, nope, I'm right, I haven't broken any in-say laws, but so you shouldn't be harassing me, but you're still going to get the ticket? My friend who was a police officer said, you may beat the rap, but you won't beat the ride, meaning you're still going to get a ticket if you break that preventive law, even though you haven't broken any, you haven't hurt anybody, and you haven't damaged any property. So anyway, more on that later. Alright, reduce speed ahead, and I believe this is where it's going to say strictly enforced. So I just keep the camera rolling. Here it comes. Yep. Look on the right. Look on the right. Strictly enforced. Strictly enforced. And it says radar enforced. So, there you go. Even though you may be in the left lane, you may not exceed 50 miles an hour. So, all you people who think that the left lane is passing only everywhere, universally, you're wrong. The biker gang! Alright, now that you saw that sign that said strictly enforced, I'll talk about three things concerning laws and kind of also address what Hashnasi said about INSAE versus, I can't remember what the other one was, but preventive laws. And I agree with him. I agree with his assessment of those two types of laws. And there's three things concerning laws, like I said. There's the letter of the law, there's the intent of the law, and there's actual interpretation of the law, or the reality of the law. And this is kind of a subcategory of the two categories that Hashnasi was talking about. And I'm going to talk about all laws, whether they be INSAE laws or the preventive laws. Now, the letter law says you shall not do this, or it is illegal to do this or that, right? And just like that sign that said it is strictly enforced 50 miles an hour, that's the letter of the law. Oh, I just passed a police car there. And he was checking for people speeding, and I am not speeding. Oh, hang on. There's somebody I got caught up here with me. All right, there you go. Apparently, he did not heed the strictly enforced part of the law. And he got busted. Okay, so the letter law says you shall not exceed 50 miles an hour through this area of the country. The spirit of the law has to do with the preventive part of law, in that it's a good idea not to exceed this speed limit, because if you do, the probability of causing a wreck or violating an INSAE law, one where you've damaged property or injured somebody, become higher if you break this preventive law. So that's the spirit of the law. The actual interpretation of the law is, if you go 51 miles an hour, the police get to pull you over and give you a ticket and charge you money for not damaging anything. You haven't hurt anybody, but you've broken the letter of the law. And I agree that's ridiculous. It's abuse. Personally, to me, it's abuse of power. And the other question Hashnasi was asking was, why do we have these stupid laws? Well, he kind of answered his own question, in that it funds the police. And like him or hate him, Rush Limbaugh had a statement that he said a long time ago. I'm sure he's not the one that coined the term. Maybe he is, I don't know, but I'm sure people have been saying it a lot longer than Rush Limbaugh, but just that's the first time I heard it, is follow the money. When anything doesn't make sense, doesn't follow logic, it has to do with money, or either the factor of I stand to lose money if this law isn't enforced, or I stand to gain money if this law is enforced, right? Or I stand to lose money if this law is not enforced, or we don't have a law that protects me from losing my money or losing my assets. If there's no law, no stupid law, or this stupid law will help me make money, or will generate revenue. So, are these preventive laws ever going to go away? Not likely. Are they stupid? Are they abuses of power? Absolutely. but that is the reality that we live in. That is our world. And knowing the law, sometimes knowing what the law is, does not make you immune to abuse of power. Just like that strictly enforced, it's it's a license to extort, right? It's a license for the government to extort money from you. Does it suck? Yeah, it sucks. But you have to learn how to play the game better than the game maker, so to speak. A Hunger Games reference there. So the game maker, and it's not one game maker, but the game makers, people who write these stupid laws, they have established these laws with good intentions in some aspects and with bad intentions in some aspects. We don't know what the intent of the lawmaker. You hope, and they've sold it as a good intent, but people are people, and just because they're in government, I'm not saying all cops are bad. So yeah, you leave a comment if you want. It generates revenue for me, right? But police officers, judges, they are not immune to corruption. They're people too, and even though you may be in your absolute rights to exercise 3 miles, to exercise the rights, even though you are in the right, even by the letter of the law, if somebody interprets the law, somebody in authority interprets the law to their advantage, even though it violates the letter of the law, you're still screwed. So I'm not saying, down with the man or anything. I'm just saying that's the reality, and you need to prepare your mind. You have to be mentally honest with yourself that does happen, that will happen to you, and the best thing you can do is minimize the damage to yourself or the inconvenience that you'll experience, even though you're in the right. Case in point, crosswalks. Continue 42 miles. If you are a pedestrian, you have, and you're crossing at a crosswalk, it is your right to walk across that crosswalk, and people in cars have to stop. That is the letter of the law. Well, okay, somebody not paying attention, or you're not paying attention, and you just say, oh, well, it's a crosswalk, I'm legally entitled to walk across that crosswalk, and no car should hit me, otherwise it's their fault. Well, if you're not paying attention and the car clips you and breaks your legs, or God forbid kills you, you were right. A friend of mine says, you're right, but you'd be dead right. Now, again, I'm human. I'm not immune to thinking that far ahead sometimes. And again, on purpose or complacency, I will forget to look both ways. Of course, I don't, or I try not to anyway. We get distracted, but we will, by all intents, be perfectly legal, but because of somebody else's negligence, will cause us injury or harm. That's why they're called accidents, right? But for the most part, you have to live your life and judge by your experiences when to push the issue with authority. And if that's the kind of dice you want to roll, go for it. Albeit, now now that I've ranted, going back to that strictly enforced and tailgating and all that, it is a this or that. You have to choose between two letters of the law or multiple letters of the law and multiple spirits of the law in terms of slower traffic, keep right, speeding in a place that has posted speed limit signs, or dealing with a tailgater. And this all goes back to that stupid tailgater video that I posted that everybody gets everybody gets butt hurt about. In that situation, you have to make a judgment call. Did I make the right judgment call? I don't know. It was right for me. But in that space and time, you have to make a decision. Are you going to is it more? I mean, a law is a law. Broken is broken, right? So is it more against the law to speed in an area where you're not allowed to speed, or is it more against the law to tailgate? Well, and it's a judgment call on the police officer. Now, all those places that say slower traffic, keep right, that does not say, it does not mean, and it does not mean that if you're going the speed limit, you have to keep to the right. It means if you're going under the speed limit, you have to keep to the right. And it also does not mean that, there's a corollary. It also does not mean that if you want to pass, you can go any speed you want to and go on the left lane and pass. Ask any police officer, and this will be interesting. Leave your comment below if you're either a police officer. What's this guy doing? This guy doesn't know which lane he wants to be in. So leave a comment below if you're a police officer, or if you've asked a police officer, if he came upon a line of traffic going above the speed limit, say 10 miles over, say it was a 70 mile an hour zone and people are going 80 miles an hour, and there's a guy tailgating and the guy in front of the tailgater can't move over, who's he going to give the ticket to? The guy in front of the tailgater or the tailgater? Right? So anyway, I'll leave that there, and I'll make this a separate video from my other videos. So that's all I got for this section. Later.